Hey everybody, welcome to the review for political geography. What we're going to do today is go through the unit, and I'm going to give you the highlights of what we talked about and what you need to make sure you study as we go through. We're not going to reteach the entire unit in this little review. This is just kind of an outline to make sure you're studying the right stuff. Okay? So everybody stay along with me. Let's see. To start off, understand the difference between a state and a nation. Give me the characteristics of a state, characteristics of a nation. Understand one is a group of people, and one is an actual place with borders, a government, all the things that come along with being a state. Make sure you can define and give examples of that. Let's see. Understand the differences between nation-states, multinational states, multi-state nations, and stateless nations. You should be able to identify those on maps. Tell me what each one means. Tell me how oftentimes they are formed through the legacy of imperialism idea of multinational states or multi-state nations, how that works, what a true nation-state is, some examples of those. Those will all be beneficial for you. The problems that come along with each one of those, like, for example, multinational states, the idea of centrifugal forces and all the different centrifugal forces that we have listed in our notes. Some examples of centrifugal forces leading to things like devolution and then dissolution, balkanization, the Velvet Divorce, all those things that we've talked about. You should be able to talk about that and give examples. That's important. The rise of nationalism, talk about how the rise of nationalism can be in some ways a strong centripetal force, but if you have nationalistic issues within a state, that can also be a centrifugal force. Talk about the evolution of a state from the Neolithic Revolution on through urban settlements, city-states, nation-states, what we have today, multinational states, and the development of what's coming with supranational organizations. Colonialism, imperialism will be on there a little bit. We did a whole review on colonialism and imperialism, understand the legacy of colonial imperialism, how that developed, and how that really created what we look at in the political geography landscape of today, especially in places where you had a lot of colonial possessions that have now morphed into countries that have issues like multinational states. Some of the positive and negative consequences of imperialism, know those. Those are on the slides. The importance of boundaries. Remember, we talked a lot about boundaries, physical boundaries and cultural boundaries. You've got to be able to tell the difference between those two and the different types of boundaries we have. Compact, elongated, corrupted, fragmented, and perforated. Understand what those look like, be able to ID them on a map, okay, and kind of talk about some of the implications of each one of those types of boundaries, as in compact boundaries oftentimes are centripetal forces because everybody's close together. An elongated boundary can keep people separated, so there could be a centrifugal force. Obviously, fragmented, perforated. One thing I would definitely recommend is make sure you know the difference between the perforated state and a political enclave. Know what the perforated state is. Know what the enclave is. There's not a lot of those, so don't mix them up. Remember, a perforated state is like South Africa or Italy. The enclave is Lesotho or San Marino. Let's see. Landlocked countries. Understand what it means to be landlocked and some of the implications of being landlocked. How it can cause a problem for you in regards to trade because you don't have your own ports. What it means if you're doubly landlocked. Enclaves and exclaves. We talked about exclaves a lot. Remember, it's when it's part of the country is not contiguous with the rest of the country. It's been separated, oftentimes by a proruption, something like that. So it's part of the country, but it's not contiguous. It doesn't touch. Also, enclaves. Remember, there's two different types of enclaves. Ethnic enclaves, political enclaves. You need to know the difference and be able to give examples of both of those. Let's see. Different types of governments. A unitary system, where you have one government in charge of everybody. Understand what that is. Be able to give examples. A federal system. Pretty easy to define the United States as a federal system, where you have a central government, but also power has been kind of spread out to regional governments as well, so they can better rule and meet the needs of the individual groups of people. A confederation. Some examples of confederation, like the EU or the U.S. under the Articles of Confederation. Understand gerrymandering and what the purpose of gerrymandering is, how it can take one group of people and get different results for an election depending on how you chop them up in districts. Supranationalism. Okay, understand supranationalism in regards to how we went from How we started off as a multipolar world, then we went to a bipolar world, then a unipolar world, with the United States being the only world superpower. Understand how now, with the rise of supranationalism, supranational organizations are trying to, in a sense, change that, get the power shifted into a new world order where organizations like the EU could possibly compete with the United States. It's not working at this point, but that's the overall goal. Understand the historical rise of supranationalism from World War II to the Cold War on to today. The benefits of being part of a supranational organization, whether it's money, peace, military backup, encouraging development in certain places. We talked a lot about the UN. Make sure you grasp what the UN's about and the things they do, whether it be preserving peace, development, human rights, enforcing international law, things like whether it be trade regulations and territorial regulations like UNCLOS, or things like fighting terrorism, the ICJ, anything like that. Understand the bad parts of the UN, how they've had sometimes have an issue with not acting immediately or swiftly enough to stop things like the genocide in Rwanda, how they weren't able to stop Iran from their nuclear program, North Korea with their nuclear program. Definitely understand the ability for the 5 UN Security Council, permanent UN Security Council members to veto decisions, votes, decisions from the ICJ, how those 5 countries basically can rule the UN because they can stop any resolutions that the UN passes regardless if everybody else likes it. One veto from one of those members stops it completely. So understand the implications of that. Other supranational organizations that you want to look at. OPEC, know their purpose. NAFTA, understand its purpose and who's involved with that. The European Union, you did a lot of Why Geography Matters on the European Union. You should have that pretty well. NATO, its military purpose and how that works. And the African Union and the Arab League. To kind of end it up, understand geopolitics. Geopolitics is kind of the overarching theme of this unit, how power is distributed throughout the world and where it's distributed. Things like multipolar, unipolar, bipolar worlds, unilateral versus multilateral decisions. These are all part of geopolitics, how power and decisions are made. So make sure you keep that in mind when we do the test. Okay. Now, a couple things I want you to keep in mind. Oh, last thing, the three geopolitical theories, organic, Rimland, and Heartland. Those are also fair game for the test. A couple things I want to remind you of on the FRQs. Answer them in order. Block your answers. If you're answering part 1, subsection A, write 1A and answer. Then give space. Then write 1B. Be very clear on what you're answering. The last time you guys did your FRQs, you wrote massive paragraphs. You didn't label things. It was very difficult to grade, and we missed points in some cases because of that. So block your answers. Also, remember your FRQ rules. Okay, 2 sentences plus a definition if you're asked to define something. Do not skip parts of your FRQ. Do not be vague. Be specific. More is better than less. Okay? Don't ramble, but more is better than less. Make sure you write your FRQs well. The FRQs, some of them were great, some of them were not so great. We want to make sure we're improving on that every time we take it. Okay? Past that, good luck studying. A couple of you asked for some study tips. What I would do with this is I would make sure as you study, you're not just memorizing concepts, but you're making sure you have examples for each concept and making sure you understand how that concept can apply in multiple situations. Okay? I know that's not the easiest thing to do, but as opposed to just memorizing stuff, come up with a concept. Say, okay, what is this? How does it apply to what we've talked about, and what are some examples of it? Therefore, if you get a question that says, which of the following is not an example of blank, you have idea in your head of how that applies to different things, different situations throughout the world, and you can scratch out the ones that are obviously not correct. Okay? All right, good luck studying. I will see you on Monday. We'll do some review on Monday. Any questions you have, make sure you ask me then.